The words Hia and Kopala have great meaning in Assyrian culture. But do you know what these words mean? If you haven't guessed already, both of these are related to Assyrian weddings and the customs within them. I'm sure most people have been to at least one wedding within their life, but arguably, Assyrian ones are some of the most fun to attend, along with being culturally rich. Luckily, I grew up with an Assyrian mother, so I've been immersed in the culture from the time I was young and everything that goes along with it, including the weddings. In preparation for and during this event, many crucial cultural practices take place, such as the sewing of the honeymoon blanket, the groom's family picking up the bride, and the khiga. First, we start with the sewing of the honeymoon blanket. The sewing of this blanket is an intricate and extensive process that is very near and dear to the bride's heart. The reason it's so important to her is because it's a woman-oriented ceremony. Female relatives from both sides of the soon-to-be family gather and create this piece of cloth for both the bride and groom to cherish for years to come. According to the article 7 Ancient Assyrian Wedding Traditions, written in 2020, it states that when the female relatives gather, they pass a needle from one to another, making sure that everyone gets at least one stitch in the blanket. It's almost a way of showing how they're standing in solidarity with the bride, in support of her marriage. Another thing that's done during the sewing is a dance. It's a cultural dance of sorts, typically performed by the bride, as she's not actively involved in the sewing part of the ceremony. It's also done for entertainment purposes, due to the fact that the sewing can generally take quite a long time. Along with being a woman-oriented ceremony, it's also a great bonding experience. Due to the fact that Assyrian marriage can move a tad quicker than typical marriage, it's important that the families get together and get to know each other the best that they can. And what better way to do this than sew a blanket together for 3 to 4 hours? After all this, the bride then receives her blanket at her bridal shower. This is actually my mother's bridal blanket that she received. As you can see, it has some of her favorite colors on there, along with flowers as well. Another practice that is still prevalent in Assyrian culture today is the groom's family picking up the bride. Unlike the honeymoon blanket, though, this practice is dominated by the male family members. According to Assyrian Rituals of Lifestyle Events by Yoav Benjamin in 2021, it states that the bride's male family members, whether it be a brother or a father, escorts her to her front door to meet the groom's immediate family. But, knowing Assyrians, a regular walk to the door could never just be a regular walk to the door. Directly quoted from Assyrian Wedding Traditions by Catherine Marchant, written in 2015, it states that while the groom and groomsmen are waiting at the church, his relatives are all at the bride's house, singing and dancing, waiting to escort her to the church. As shown on some of the pictures on here, you can see how busy and crowded it gets when people cram into the house to get her to the front door. Along with walking the bride to the front door, dowries are also demanded once she gets to the very front. Although this isn't very common, it is still practiced in Assyrian culture. Going back to the older times though, the dowries were much more materialistic than they are now. According to the ancient story of the bride and groom written by Birsen and Al, it is stated that when the bride is young, a dowry is collected in a small chest full of material items for her wedding day. Whereas now, the dowries are much more money-oriented. So, calling back to my previous paper written by Catherine Marchant, she recollects that the male family member that walks the bride to the door demands some form of payment from the groom's family. And once she receives that, she's free to go to the ceremony. While these two traditions may seem dull the most, the khiga definitely livens up the event. This is an Assyrian folk dance, and it's typically ongoing. According to the article An Assyrian Wedding written by Eileen Union in 2017, she states that most people need to take breaks due to how ongoing the dance can be. I've definitely had my fair share of aching feet and exhaustion the day after an Assyrian wedding. Another recollection by Yunin is the traditional attire that Assyrians wear during these dances. Most commonly, the woman's scarves being the yalikta. Another attire that is worn usually by men, is hats that have feathers all over them, or a small cane like this called a kobala. And they usually wave them around chaotically due to the party-like nature of the wedding reception. During this speech, I've discussed 3 very intricate Assyrian wedding culture traditions: the sewing of the honeymoon blanket, the groom's family picking up the bride, and the chiga. All of these are very important to Assyrians, as they typically mark one of the most important days in their life. After learning about all of these different traditions, are you interested in learning about any other cultures' traditions? Thank you.